The ultimatum hung heavy, a suffocating weight in the silence between them. I do. The words clawed their way out, a strangled whisper echoing in the cavernous space of her soul. Not a declaration of love, but a desperate gasp for air, a drowning man's frantic clutch at a life raft. Why? This gnawing, visceral empathy. Was it a phantom sweetness of a promised Eden? A life shimmering impossible before her, tethered to this man like a drowning weight to an anchor? Or was it some twisted, unholy calling, a perverse sense of duty to salvage a fractured soul, even if it meant her own damnation? Her own slow, agonizing descent into hell. Panic, raw, suffocating, constricted her chest. A venomous serpent coiling its icy scales, scraping against her ribs. Husband number two? The phrase tasted like ash and bile, a bitter mockery etched into her soul, a grim monument to her past mistakes. She'd posed the hard questions, yes, but they'd been whispered, tentative probes, not the brutal, necessary incisions required to expose the festering wounds beneath. He mirrored her carefully constructed facade, a polished reflection masking the chasm of his deceit. The dissonance between them vibrated, a malvent hum that resonated deep within her bones, an unspoken lie pulsing like a second corrupted heartbeat. Then it hit her, a physical blow that shattered the carefully constructed illusion. She hadn't just loved him, she'd absorbed him. His darkness seeking into her very being, staining the pristine white of her serenity with the grimming hues of chaos. The taste of ashes filled her mouth, acrid and overwhelming, the bitter price of love built not on sand, but on the treacherous, shifting tectonic plates of delusion. This wasn't a marriage, it was a slow, agonizing suicide pact. The absence of a divine budget for her wedding gown gnawed at her, a persistent, agonizing ache. His frequent probing, his subtle test of her resolve were unmistakable. Perhaps a bolder defense, a vocal assertion of her needs might have altered their trajectory. Instead, she internalized every slight, every contemptuous blow aimed at her very being and aspiration. These dreams, insignificant as they seemed beside his, trapped within the silent chambers of her heart and mind, a private supplication whispered only to the Almighty. This wasn't merely avarice, it was a cold, calculated erasure of her very being. His contempt, a tangible thing, clawed at her, a visceral violation. A feral hunger consumed her, not for the pale imitations of champagne wishes, but for life incandescent. A symphony of breathtaking moments that vibrated in her very cells. She craved a love that tasted like forbidden blood, a passion that seared her soul like molten gold. Not the gaudy trinkets paraded before the vapid eyes of society's vultures. She wanted gifts, divine gifts, felt not in the bones, but in the deepest marrow, the marrow of her very soul. A taste like consecrated blood, a roaring, pulsing symphony that shattered the silence of her soul. Her desires, a potent elixir of insurrection and ethereal grace, overwhelmed the cloying sweetness of his vapid existence. It was an aroma of audacious resistance, a fragrance forged in the fiery crucible of her past, rising like from its ruins. She would not be reduced to dust. She craved a life forged in the crucible of passion, a life etched not just in fire, but in the blood and starlight, a saga whispered on the wind, a legacy that would scorch the heavens long after the brittle glitter of his empty world had crumbled into oblivion, leaving only the acrid taste of regret. Following swiftly upon the acquisitions of the marriage license, a momentous and legally binding document, a new chapter commenced the argument about children. His brutal words, a vicious attack on her womanhood, a fresh wound mirroring the deeper wounds he'd already inflicted. Church became a ritual of desperate hope, their voices a desperate plea to God, whom seemed distant and uncaring. The memory clawed at Tamaria, icy fingers raking across the barren landscape of her and Kofi's shared life. A searing emptiness pulsed where a spiritual connection should have bloomed. Years bled into a stark, agonizing absence. The ghost of his touch, never truly felt, haunted her more than any physical absence. Years spent side by side, yet they truly never clasped hands in prayers, never built a sanctuary of faith together. Two hands, yes, but clenched into fist, each guarding a private wound. Two hearts beating a discordant rhythm, two minds locked in a silent war. Husband and wife, they were called Adam and Eve, a grotesque prodigy, queen and king ruling over a fractured kingdom in their own making. Light and dark, yes, but each consumed by their own shadows, never illuminating the other. Were they not both serving the same God? The question hung, accurate and unanswered, a bitter taste on her tongue. Those paltry prayers mumbled before Kofi's mother, the hasty whispers before mirrors were mere performances, separate acts devoid of shared intimacy. The scent of incense in the church, usually a balm, only intensified the chasm between them. Tamaria's arms stretched towards the heaven, a desperate plea rising from the depths of her soul. The rough wool of her dress grated against her skin, mirroring the friction of their marriage. Her eyes squeezed shut, tears hot and stinging, a silent scream against the coldness radiating from Kofi. His gaze, a glacial stare, sliced through her fervor, a knife of disbelief carving into her heart. It wasn't a mere lack of faith, it was a poison, a malignancy eating at their bond, a deep festering wound of inadequacy. His mistrust, a mirror reflecting her own deepest fears. He saw her faith, her unwavering belief in a benevolent universe, not as a strength, but as a childish fantasy, a fragile escape from the suffocating realities of their failing marriage, a reality he had helped create. The thought struck him like a physical blow, a cold, hard truth he'd been desperately avoiding. A man who prided himself on logic and reason was now grappling with the insidious tendrils of his own self-loathing. His accusations, once hurled as weapons, now felt like self-flagellations, each bitter word a confirmation of his own failings. He'd always valued honesty above all else, yet the easy lie, the careful, constructive facade he presented to the world felt increasingly alluring. To admit the depths of his own insecurities, his own infidelities, the crushing weight of his own regrets would shatter the carefully crafted image he painstakingly built. That malevolent entity was slowly suffocating him. It demanded a choice, confess or risk losing everything. Her, his reputation, the comfortable lie of his life, or continue the charade, allowing the poison to fester and consume them both. He knew deep down that confession was the morally right path, the path dedicated by his own rigid code. But the fear of consequences, the anticipated pain, and the humiliation was a vice around his chest. He'd rather endure the gnawing guilt, the silent screaming of the unspoken, than face the raw, exposed vulnerability of the truth.